Good morning, it's Chad Seay from Seay Real Estate here in Richmond, Virginia. And this week I want to talk to you about selling tenant-occupied properties. So over the years, on many occasions, I've had landlords call me who have decided they no longer want to be a landlord and they want to sell their rental home, normally single-family houses. And we talk about what needs to happen for that to happen. And along the way, if the property is occupied by a tenant, that discussion comes up, how to handle that, whether we wait for the tenant to move out and then proceed, or get it on the market right away with the tenant still living in there. And oftentimes, that's what a property owner wants to do. If I'm asked, what can we do to sell it for the most we can, for the highest dollar amount, in the most efficient manner, the answer is always the same. Have the tenant move out, give the house a good cleaning, possibly a light renovation if that's needed, and help it to put its best foot forward, and we can sell it for the most money taking that approach. Now, oftentimes I'll have property owners who, wow, it's really going to hurt for that income to stop while they're sitting there waiting for the property to sell. Some people, that's just not an option. It has to be put on the market while the tenant is in there. And there's exceptions to every rule. I've mentioned that before on these videos, and there's an exception to this one, but this is what happens most of the time. If we go to sell a house while a tenant is in there, right away it's always harder. It's very rare to find a tenant, first of all, who's going to keep the house looking like a property owner would. Not that all property owners keep their places looking perfectly, but you know what I mean. It's not very often that the tenant cares as much about this property being sold. In fact, sometimes they would rather it not be sold, and they can work against that process. So when we go to sell a house that has a tenant living in it, it's very common for us to find out that every time we have someone wanting to see it, it's not a convenient time for the tenant. That won't work, but could you do it between 5 and 5:08 on Sunday evening? And requirements are set that are just hard to keep. We miss a lot of showings. Not only that, but when the house does get shown, again, it usually doesn't present itself in its best light. And heaven forbid the tenant be there while the house is being shown, because they can be more particular than a home inspector in pointing out all the defects with the property. Now there's exceptions. Sometimes we have tenants who keep the place far better than an owner would and are very cooperative. It might be 3% of the time. So it's best if the tenant is given notice, they move out, the owner cleans it up and puts it on the market and sells it that way. With the tenant in it, you also limit who you can sell it to. Owner occupants, sometimes it works where, the tenant can be given notice and the person who wants to buy the house to live in it can wait it out while they move on. But some situations where we're selling tenant-occupied houses, we really narrow our potential buyer pool to only investors who might be able to buy the house, let the tenant stay in there, and just continue on the path that the prior homeowner had. Keep in mind that investors don't tend to pay as much for the property as an owner-occupant. So there again, with it empty, clean, targeting an owner-occupant, that yields the most money. That's not always most important to a homeowner. Some homeowners just want to be relieved of it and relieved quickly. And sometimes offering it at a really good deal, a discounted price to other investors, is a good way to move the property along. So a little bit on selling tenant-occupied property this week, and I hope you have a great week.